Welcome to the deep dive. You've shared some really interesting source material with us today, and we're going to dig into this idea of taking a whole stack of, well, quite different data points, numbers, labels, even colors, and trying to turn it all into one clear ranking system.
Yeah, that's exactly the challenge laid out in this proposal we're looking at. It's basically a plan, a blueprint for building a dashboard on Tableau Public. And the whole point is to rank countries using, get this, 10 separate data sets.
Right. So our mission here for this deep dive is to really unpack that proposal. What's the actual process look like? What are the maybe hidden challenges? And what key decisions are being made sort of behind the curtain that end up shaping what looks like, just a simple list on the surface?
Because as this material really highlights, it's not just plugging numbers into a machine. It's about how you structure data, how you make interpretations. It's building a system where every single choice, like how you handle, say, a color code or how you average things out, really impacts the final story that data tells you.
Okay, let's get into it then. The main goal seems pretty clear on the face of it. Build a dashboard, rank maybe 85 to 100 or more countries using these 10 different sources.
Exactly. And importantly, it's not just showing how a country ranks within each separate data set. The bigger goal is to kind of synthesize all that, pull it together into one comprehensive overall ranking.
Which immediately sounds tricky when you look at the kind of data they're starting with. The proposal mentions how diverse it is. Like, some data sets might give you a nice, neat rank already. Netherlands was rank 3 last year, rank 8 the year before. That's straightforward, numerically speaking.
Yeah, that's the easy part. But then you hit the qualitative stuff. The source points out things like green, gray, or red flags, or maybe white, gray, black color codes. These aren't numbers, they're descriptions, but they carry meaning that needs to somehow factor into the rank.
Okay, so you have to somehow convert those labels, those descriptions, into numbers. Why is that step so critical right at the start? It feels like you're, adding judgment immediately.
Well, it's fascinating because you're essentially forcing a quantitative structure onto something that wasn't originally quantitative, right? That red flag has to become a number, maybe it's a 1, maybe green is a 10, so you can actually compare it and combine it with, say, real rank positions or other scores. And if the scale you choose doesn't really capture the, let's say, intended meaning or severity of that flag or color, well, you just built a bias right into the system from the get-go. It's a really fundamental choice about measurement.
And then it gets even more complex with missing data. The sources mention this issue where a country might be in, say, 7 data sets, but just not in the other 3.
Yeah, and this is where some really big decisions have to happen. If country A has data from all 10 sources, great, but country B only has data from 5. How do you make that overall ranking fair? Do you, assume country B would have been average in the missing ones, or do you sort of penalize them? The proposal really emphasizes that you need a strategy for how this missing data affects the overall rank. It's not just a technical glitch to fix, it's a core design decision that shapes the whole comparison.
Which leads perfectly into what the source calls the critical step, developing the ranking logic, defining that actual formula for the overall score.
Right. You've wrangled the data, you've converted the qualitative stuff, you've thought about missing values. Now you need the actual rule book for combining it all. This is where you decide about things like weighting. Should data from source X count more than data from source Y? Maybe one's considered, more authoritative. And how exactly does your missing data strategy feed into this calculation? The goal, they say, is a system that's transparent and logical, so you, the user, can actually understand how they got to that final number.
Okay, so you've got your data sorted, you've got your logic figured out, now the technical build. And before you even think about charts, there's that crucial data prep step.
Oh, yeah. You might start with 10, kind of messy Excel sheets. They could have inconsistent names for countries US, USA, United States, different formats, maybe needing calculations added. You have to clean all that, transform it, merge it into one clean, unified data source that Tableau can actually work with properly. The proposal mentions tools like data prep, maybe Cheme or Tableau prep for this job. It's essential groundwork.
Yeah.
Often tedious, but essential.
You get that wrong and the whole thing falls apart later.
Absolutely. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say. If your countries don't match up or your numbers are slightly off because of some cleaning error, well, your fancy dashboard isn't going to be accurate.
Okay, groundwork done. Clean data source ready. Now you move into Tableau itself, designing and building the dashboard. This is where you actually implement those rankings. You design the individual source ranks and that big overall one.
And, of course, visualize them. The proposal talks about making intuitive charts, visually appealing tables, clear bar charts for the rankings are common, maybe trend lines if there's historical data. Maps could work too, depending on the context. But the key focus is clarity and making it easy to grasp the information.
And they specifically mention an aesthetic goal, clean and crisp, a modern look and feel. They really want to avoid clutter.
Definitely. All that complex work we talked about, that happens backstage. What the user sees needs to feel simple, direct, easy on the eyes.
A big part of that is interactivity. The proposal really stresses building in filters, parameters, actions. What that means for you, the listener using the dashboard, is you're not just looking at a static picture. You can play with it. You could filter down to just see, say, Asian countries. Or maybe you only care about dataset C's ranking. Or select one specific country and see how it does across all 10 sources side by side.
That's where the real value comes in for the user, isn't it? You get to slice and dice the data, ask your own questions, and get answers visualized almost immediately. And making sure that process is easy, that anyone can navigate it without needing a data science degree, that's crucial for user experience.
There's also a practical point in there about updates needing to easily add new data manually each year.
Yeah, for a ranking that changes over time, which most do, you need a sustainable process. So the design has to make that update simple. Usually that means making sure the new data files follow the exact same format each year. It just streamlines the ongoing work.
And then, wrapping up the process, the proposal mentions the usual quality steps: testing, refining based on feedback, publishing it out to Tableau Public,
and providing the embed code so it can live on a website. All standard but critical steps to make sure the final thing is accurate, works well, and gets seen.
So, okay, we walked through this whole journey from messy data to interactive dashboard. Why does understanding all this process matter to you, the listener?
Well, I think if you connect it back to the bigger picture, it really shows that what looks like a simple ranking, it involves layers and layers of quite significant decisions. Every time you see a list ranking things, cities, universities, products, whatever it is, or countries like here, it's the result of someone's hopefully thoughtful engineering. The choices made about converting words to numbers, handling those gaps in data, deciding if one source is more important, how it looks, all that directly shapes who ends up at number 1, number 10, number 50. Kind of pulls back the curtain, doesn't it, on how complex information gets structured to give us what seems like a simple insight.
And that really is the journey laid out here, from all these separate kind of raw data sources through that careful cleaning and prep work, the absolutely critical design of the ranking formula, which involves making fundamental calls about value and comparison, and finally that thoughtful dashboard designed to create something unified, interactive, that helps you understand these complex country rankings.
Yeah, we've touched on how you need to interpret different data types, how deciding on missing data isn't trivial, it fundamentally shapes the results, and how the design has to balance being technically sound with being clear and easy for a user to interact with.
So the sources specifically called out developing that ranking formula as a critical step, which leads to maybe a final thought for you to consider. When you think about all those choices, defining the formula, handling missing info, turning qualitative stuff into numbers, how much of any ranking you see out there? How much is just objective truth purely from the data, and how much is actually shaped by the specific assumptions and choices made by the people who built it?
Yeah, what questions does that make you ask the next time you stumble across a top 10 list or any kind of ranking in the world? It makes you think, doesn't it?